ready. You ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to another Unauthorized Caucus. It is noon. It's Thursday, so it's caucus time. Mason is out this week. He decided of all weeks to skip out for it to be this one, which, we can always cover a caucus without him. But Collegians, that was kind of a pain. Mason, we're going to remember that for a while. But as you know, we've got David Gordon here, one of our interns at the Phyllis Schlafly Center. He and I were in D.C. this week at our aforementioned Collegians program, and it was great. 4 solid hours of a broadcast that was just guest after guest after guest after guest, and there were some incredible people. So, you can go and watch the whole thing yourself. And obviously, over the coming days here, it's going to be broken down into bite-sized pieces. You'll be able to have and watch and share individual guests. But we wanted to come on and talk a little bit about that and just have a recap, kind of what our thoughts were. And also, there's a lot of other stuff going on. But I think next week, being the 4th of July, we're going to have to figure out a different schedule. It's on the Thursday, of course. So it's just housekeeping mode. Go to unauthorizedcaucus.com. Sign up there for the email. You will not want to miss out on that. That's also, we're going to notify you about different things, including if we have a schedule change next week. Like, share, and subscribe wherever you are. And make sure that you share this with someone and let them know they want to be in on the conversation today, because we're going to talk about a host of different things. And then, of course, as always, jump into the chat. Make sure we get to hear from you and sound off as to what we're talking about that matters to you, what you want to hear about, and different things that you have to say. We, of course, love the interaction any chance we get. Oh, so have you caught up on sleep yet, David?
Not quite.
Not quite. Neither have I. We had finally one solid night in there because we got back from D.C., but it wasn't enough.
Definitely
No,
not.
there's going to need to be multiples. But well, let me say this to begin. I don't even know how many tabs are open. If you paid attention to the Supreme Court stuff that was coming out today, there were several decisions that came down. Or have you not really?
I haven't looked at it
Okay.
much.
So there have been tons of decisions coming out. Friday, we had a big 8-1 decision that actually found states didn't have standing to bring the lawsuit they did relating to a Texas guy's gun rights. Some people say that it was an upholding of red flag laws. A lot of others said no, it really was a standing issue. And sure enough, upholding gun bans, I should say, for people who are currently under domestic restraining orders. Domestic violence restraining orders. That happened on Friday. Yesterday, we had the big Murphy v. Missouri case that came down, which I think was a pretty nasty hit to censorship, or rather, it was a hit on the censorship front. It stood up for censorship and said that was fine. The government didn't do anything wrong, when in fact, it's kind of an insult, a slap in the face to all these people who've proven now, for Hunter Biden laptop, COVID misinformation, government and big tech colluded together several times over the years to absolutely make sure that we did not see certain piece of information. There's a lot of cases that are happening, and there's a lot of overtones. I saw some today that looked like they were good smacks at the administrative state. But as you know, and as we know, we like to read through these things first because we're not, legal experts. Now, of course, there are a lot of those you can go to. If you need to absolutely know it today, go check out Mike Davis and the Article 3 Project on Twitter. Go check out Carrie Severino from the Judicial Crisis Network. Molly Hemingway is definitely another one that you want to look at. She is the editor-in-chief of the Federalist. A lot of them often talk about the Federalist as well. They're going to talk about these things, and they're going to hit a breakdown of what it means. We're probably going to do that next week because it sounds like they've added one more day, because they usually by June. The end of June is the term's end, and July 1st the Supreme Court goes off into vacation mode for a couple of months. But they added July 1st on Monday as another day for opinions. So apparently there's still some stuff coming down the pike, and it's not coming fast enough. So, or rather, it's not coming soon enough for it to be done by Friday. So they're going to add Monday. I think next week we may just devote a whole episode. We can decide this now because Mason's not here, and he doesn't even have a say.
I guess so.
Yeah, that works. But maybe next week we might just do a whole breakdown, and it'll have more of a chance for us to read through everything, what it means, because a lot of these things are very consequential. And of course, as we look at the Supreme Court, this is a big part of why and who we are voting for in November, because that's a major lasting impact that we get to have. You're voting for a president who's going to nominate, who knows? I mean, there's not any, we don't have any old ones right now who are just waiting to retire. Although some people are hoping on the left that, Clarence Thomas will retire and some others. I don't think we have that anytime soon. But there's an opportunity potentially to put more people on the court. that's a big reason why we vote the way we do in November, because that's going to be the person who picks them. And that's the Senate who has to confirm them. That's why the Senate matters on that one. So we'll come back and dive into that. I did not tell you to prepare for this, David. So we're not going to spend. It's just like, I don't want to talk about the Supreme Court. I have nothing. No, we'll come back around and do a full featured look at that next week. I think I'll grab Mason. We'll get on board with that, because I really want to unpack a few of these things and what they mean. But in the meantime, there's a few sources that you can go to. But Collegians, we sat down for 4 hours, 4.5 hours.
Probably more with the pre-records.
Yeah, we had a lot of folks who they had to join us via video, so they just joined us a little earlier in the day so that we could use it as a break. Because you sit there for 4 solid hours, you got text behind the cameras, and you got people in front where, the guests are coming in for 20 minutes at a time, but there's your behind-the-scenes look. You need to get up and stretch your legs, grab a drink, run to the bathroom. Things need to happen in 4 hours with the lights on, and you also want to turn the lights off and cool the room down. So we took a few little breaks here and there with a few folks that needed to pre-record early, and we had so many of them, we just started the program at 4:30 with some bonus content. But then we just went, and we had guest after guest after guest come in. We were in the DC Rumble studios. Thank you to Rumble for partnering with us on that. That's obviously where we run a lot of our streaming here, and I think there's going to be more exclusive stuff moving forward in the future with them. We'll talk about that on another time with Caucus, though. I think we're going to try to start honing in on exactly where we broadcast what things when it comes to the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles world, but that's a whole separate topic. So this was your first Collegians program. You've never watched or been a part of the others. So what'd you think? What were your overall, David? What were your overall thoughts just on the whole thing? Thumbs up, thumbs down, worth your time. I was just here because I got paid. What do you think? What was your impression?
Well, it's definitely a thumbs up, and honestly, the coolest thing was seeing how production works, and how much work goes into that, because it took 6 of us to keep that running the whole time, moving people in and out, making sure they have water, food, making sure people are showing up on time. So
I had more than one frantic call where we're trying to figure out, where do I park, where's the door, where's the this, where's the that. There's a huge logistical endeavor that goes behind any of these things. So there's your reminder, whether you're watching a live stream or if you are ever jumping onto a conference and going to sign up, there are a ton of people working overtime hours and then during the event in crisis mode to make sure that this thing goes off super smooth, so that this giant audience can sit down and say, this is good information. I am learning and getting activated from that. So yeah, thank your tech people. Give them a cookie. Thank them for their service. But so it was a good experience overall, and it was impressive to see the behind the scenes. Rumble is a very professional outfit, by the way. We've done this in our office, but to have their space I'm very thankful for that. It allowed us to focus more on the quality of the guests and really put time in there. And I feel like we had a fantastic lineup. It was front to back, a lot of different issues, things that matter, and that's what people ask us what we do at Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. There's still a big component of grassroots activism, but right now in the age of fake news, I feel like more and more we need organizations who are taking what's happening and distilling that down to, okay, here's what it means, and then here's what you need to go and do about it. And having all of those voices, because we all kind of hone in on different issues. Article 3 Project, Mike Davis, they are on judges, judicial stuff, courts. We lean toward them because they are the experts, but then we have a crowd of pro-America people that we can plug it. It's just to have that streamlining of information so that Americans are more armed with information and ready to go and tell someone else about it. I think that's invaluable. It's incredibly important.
Yeah, definitely. You get the real view. You don't get the censored, bought and sold opinions that you get with mainstream media. And I was telling Ed about this, that people like my age, they're more and more getting their information from podcasts and whatnot, which is, I don't know, it's just a different way of getting information that older generations didn't have.
Well, it's radio, but on the internet and on demand instead of real time. You can't pause it. When TiVo came around and then DVR and everything else, it was just mind-boggling. You didn't have to put the little thing in the VCR and then hit the record button later on to record something off of live. Now I can just do it digitally. Well, then we moved to streaming services and everything is just there for me to hit the play pause button whenever I want. Well, now podcasts have basically done the same thing to talk radio. You can have your own show, but there's no commercials, there's no limitations of airwaves. It's just online. You can find it and you can listen to it whenever you get to it. You have this big queue of things. Like, it's a natural progression of technology in my mind. It's just like we had to get over horse and buggies and move to cars. We got over radio and moved to TV. Like, podcasts are just one of the next things, but it really is a generational leap of who's already there and deep into it versus who's just now looking at it for the first time. So, I mean, okay, let me ask you this, because you and Maddie, two of our interns that were running around doing which, by the way, thank you, and thank you to Maddie for running around and helping us keep everyone on task. Thankfully, it was the Rumble Studios, so there were TVs everywhere outside the studio, so you could always keep up with the program, even if you were in the middle of something. And you guys got to sit by the mini fridges, so you were closer to those than me. Yeah, I'm still slightly better about that. We need a mini fridge. Rumble, if you're listening, you can put a mini fridge right for the text, because I was back by the tech booth. You could put a mini fridge there for your texts, and then if someone else is back there, they would appreciate it too. Yeah, just a suggestion. But you guys got an earful of a lot of the guests who were out in the waiting room and this and everything. But you got to come in and sit down and talk, near the end and wrapping up. And I liked that conversation a lot because, I'm not middle aged, but I'm the older side of young. And even though I'm kind of feet firmly both in both worlds, I understand a lot of I'm older and I have kids and responsibilities and this and that and the other, so I view things this way. I'm also young and I'm, another foot solidly into all the podcast technology and the new school stuff when it comes to ditching mainstream media and legacy media kinds. But it was a really good conversation that you guys had at the end about what young people care about, what they're prioritizing. When it comes to information like this, do you find, and here's a question specifically, obviously young people are getting their information from social media and podcasts more than ever before. Are they going to alternative new places to find that? Or is it just, I'm following some of the mainstream, like the late night comedy hosts and SNL and I'm following these people on a new media platform, but it's still the old legacy crowd? What do you find? Has Joe Rogan maybe broken that one wide open, or are we still finding that it's going back to the same sources that are bought and paid for at the fake news level?
I'd say Joe Rogan busted that wide open because, I might follow Fox News on Twitter, but you're not getting the specific commentaries from that. You're going to like a Charlie Kirk or Steven Crowder, like some of these other guys that are talking about the same topics, but they're speaking from a conservative viewpoint. So I think people are branching out. They're trying to find other sources. So I agree with that people are trying to find better ways to get their media.
Well, and now you said something too that actually made me interested, because the whole point of this show is we're not making the news happen. We are regurgitating the news. Like, we sit down and we talk about, here's all the things that happened. I want to highlight in on a few and talk about what it means. So like if you got the news headlines, great, but now you can come to a place like Unauthorized Caucus and we can talk about, okay, so what are all the implications? Like, what all does this actually affect? And then what do I do about it? Or what is there to do about it? Versus, I just want to see the raw news. I want to see what's happening right now. And you made a comment about how this is one of the reasons Twitter or X is making a resurgence, because there is raw, unfiltered, the war in Gaza. I don't have to try to figure out what's going on based on reports about it. I'm just going to go watch literal video from the ground. As uncensored as it may be, I can see for myself what's happening. Is that trend? I don't want to hear about it. I want to see what happened. Yeah. Do you feel like that's really pushing forward inside, young Americans? I'll say just 30, 35 and under. I mean, obviously you're at the younger side of that. I'm at the older side of that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's the trend where I just want to see what happened, not hear about it from someone else?
Well, I think people are at the point in time where we went through the pandemic and had all those lies that were told to us. So people want to see stuff and they won't believe it unless they see it. So yeah, and like you said, the wars, like the terrible videos you see, and that's definitely fueling some of this. Why are we funding this? This is just terrible on both sides. So, yeah.
And then I guess the only other question along that line, it makes me wonder, the older side of being young. Someone likes the older side of being young. I feel like we could all identify with that, can't we? We got someone on Rumble who's enjoying that. But let's see. Do you hold on. Let me gather my thoughts. Where was I going? Because it's talking about that, going for the straight information, everything else. Oh, do you think that we have finally, in a major way, because young people and COVID? I know that I was distrustworthy of the system and didn't believe them. COVID solidified that for me, but I already kind of thought it and knew it was there. Young people, and when I say young people, I'm talking like college age, really, college and just out of college. Do you think that actually, as a, the whole pandemic, what happened, do you think that really shattered people's illusions about, and I don't trust any of the people who are in charge anymore. They're lying to me. I'm going to go find out for myself. Did that really instill that? Or was did it kind of come up and we've moved on from it and people are going to forget, oh yeah, I shouldn't listen to these people? Did that make a lasting impact, do you think, from just your circle of friends and what you see?
Yeah, so I was in high school when the pandemic struck, so we never really had experienced, like, been really into or like read up on anything where like, oh, the government's lying about this. Mm-hmm. But what was I gonna say? So we saw all these regulations and whatnot, masks, the 6 feet thing, and we see that they didn't work and they were forced upon us. And if you disagreed with it, then you were canceled or ridiculed against. So. Mm-hmm. I think it has solidified it. COVID definitely broke the ice, per se.
Okay. Good. And that's the thing. I would tend to say that. I would tend to say that for a lot of people, it seems like COVID broke the ice for them in the sense that, nope, I'm there. I now fully distrust these people, and I'm going to look things up on my own, and I'm done. I'm done just kind of floating along and believing what I hear. But my real question is for young people who've just been pounded over and over again with a totally different kind of media than I grew up with. And that's the real difference. I mean, between you and I, iPhones didn't come out. Touchscreen, available smartphones didn't come out until I was exiting high school. So that technology really became ingrained in society once I was already into adulthood. For you, you're not that much younger than me, but in iPhone years, that is a long time. Like, everyone has a phone. Everyone has a smartphone. Everyone's got social media stuff that didn't even exist when I was your age. And I'm not that much older than you. The world on the technology side moves so very fast that it feels like, even though we're not that much different in age, technology generation, we are generations apart. And that's what I never know as I look at a situation like this and say, what are people thinking who are so much more steeped in this? They grew up with iPhone touchscreen technology that, well, that's just what they always do and I'm not really paying attention to it. Great, but are you doing something about it, or is it just normal noise to you and we're just going to go back to being apathetic? That's my real fear, is that young people see it and they're like, they're liars, but who cares? I'm just going to do my own thing. That's my real wondering there, is, are we going to actually do something about it, or does everyone just know that they're liars and then they move on?
I mean, I agree with that. I feel like young people do see the censorship and they know that they're being lied to, but they really don't see what they can do about it. Because, like, you could make a post on social media, but what's that going to reach? Just your followers, probably, and it'll be censored, like on YouTube or Instagram. You really can't. There's really not much wiggle room to speak your voice and do something about the lies that are being told. So.
Well, let's talk about some of this is something that we're not going to have one conversation and be done. We're going to come back to talk about this over and over and over again as we try to get not just young people, people of all ages, to see, yes, the system is lying to you, but yes, we need to and can do something about it. We have to. We can't just, no, well, that's how it is. No, that's why it is how it is because too many people for too long have just said, well, let's just sit it out and let them go. That's what we've got to turn around. And that's not just young people. That's across the board, that people have been apathetic, or they felt disenfranchised or deflated or defeated for a long time. And we've got to have a resurgence there. So we're going to fight that across the board. It's not just young people.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I think Twitter is doing so well right now, because there'll be a post and there'll be a news anchor saying one thing, and then in the replies of that post, it'll be the regular footage, like the real footage, and what actually happened, and it just shows they completely lied. So I think that, like, just calling them out right away, there needs to be accountability for people who are insinuating these lies. So, and if there is real accountability, that's the way that someone like, not necessarily you, but like someone like me could do something to stop this censorship, or at least combat it.
Well, speaking of censorship, we certainly had a lot of people who were censorable and have been censored quite a bit at Collegians. So we had a lot of good content. Let's just dive into some of the speakers there, because I would definitely curious. We haven't entirely talked about this yet, so this is kind of new. But who are some highlights? Throw out just like 3 or 4 names that were some of your favorites to listen to.
Mike Davis, Michael Waller, and I liked what was his name? Craig Shirley.
Craig Shirley.
I liked hearing about the old Reagan stuff.
Yeah, that was neat. Craig Shirley, for those of you who don't know, he's a historian and one of the Ronald Reagan biographers, which, I mean, when you're a biographer for a living person, you get an incredible amount of access to that person's life and records. Like, you get to know that person really well. That's why it's always very interesting when you see, I forget the guy's name, when Tucker first was coming out of Fox News and going into his own thing, there were a lot of people, oh, Tucker's just a rich guy who doesn't really care about speaking the truth, and, well, he didn't want Fox's money, and he's kind of had his shtick of being super conservative. And one of his biographers was like, no, Tucker's the real deal. Man, he is fiery, he owes nobody nothing, and he is going to come for the truth, and he will make his own network someday, or something like that. Like, I saw that kind of thing. Well, look where we are with TCN and what he has continued to do, despite great opposition and financial loss to him, because that Fox contract had to be worth an incredible amount of money. I mean, the biographer knew better than what a lot of people's opinions were, because he's like, no, I know him. I've been around him. And that is an incredible thing, especially when you can reach back like to the Reagan era. I mean, it's not that long ago in the history of the world or the United States, but that's a long time ago. I mean, people who were in the middle of those things at that point, we don't have as many of them around as we used to. So the Craig Shirleys of the world are fascinating to talk to because of who they've been around and how many things they've been in. He's got best-selling books all over, historical books. Of course, his Ronald Reagan books are fantastic, but he was a good one. He was really neat to have in studio. A really good part of living history and legacy there. It's really neat.
But he came bearing gifts too. He signed a book for me and signed a book for Maddie, which was cool.
Yeah, it's the benefits of being on the other side. You young people. No one looked at me like, you look like a book. No, I'm kidding. I do have Craig Shirley's books though on Reagan, and they're fantastic. Or one book. I have one book. I have one book of his on Reagan. Mike Waller, another one. J. Michael Waller, Big Intel is his book that we were talking primarily about. He's an author, but he's a dude. He's a man's dude, a spook from back in the day that knows a lot of things. Like I said, you get on his LinkedIn page and you just realize there's this giant gap of time that's probably really fascinating, but it doesn't exist. And then you see Blackwater, and then it moves on from there, and you're like, holy cow. This guy is someone who knows a lot of things, and I can't believe he's not dead. But he's going on a tear with naming names and talking about what's happening inside U.S. intelligence agencies and how they are no longer for the American people. They are just these entities in and of themselves, for themselves. And he doesn't pull any punches when it comes to talking about the CIA, the FBI, and how the subtitle of his book, how they went from Cold War heroes to deep state villains. So what struck you particularly about Mike Waller, specifics?
I mean, it's the fact that he said he wrote the book in a more toned down manner because he thought people wouldn't believe it. I was just like, what do you mean?
Yes. Now I want the whole book, dude.
now I want the whole thing.
Exactly. And he said something about, had to wait until enough people agreed to it or died or something like that, and then he had to tone it down even still. It's wild.
Yeah.
So Mike Waller was another good one. Of course, Mike Davis. You fanboyed over Mike Davis a little bit. Got a picture, but Mike Davis is truly one of the savages of Twitter who just has no space for stupidity. He will go forward and speak the truth and say what matters, and pull no punches when it comes to telling the truth. And that's Mike Davis to me, and then you talk about what you think. Mike Davis to me is the epitome of where the right needs to go, because I understand that we have principles and convictions, but like Mason and I talk about a lot here, if you don't do anything with your principles and convictions, if we kind of manage to stumble into winning an election and then we go back to this magnanimous, oh, well, now we can all just get along and we'll extend the olive branch and bipartisanship. No. Fire the communists, jail the communists, kick every single one of them out and shut down this bureaucratic bloated nightmare that they've made. Do it. Otherwise, winning means nothing. You've done nothing, and now it's just going to be kind of 4 more years of going slowly in the same direction until they take over again and mash the gas. And Mike is one of those people who says, no, we get in power and we absolutely turn the tables. Otherwise, they have shredded the Constitution and we do nothing. Like, you have to win and you have to be right. And we have a lot of people who like being right, but they don't know how to win. And we have a lot of people who like to win, but they have no moral compass, so they just win and they go along with the, who's bought and paid for. Mike is one of the people who does both, and I think it's a great model for a lot of the right to pick up. We must keep our principles and kick butt and win. And then when we get on the other side of winning, you have to clean house. And Republicans have been terribly bad at that. And Mike is a great voice for change it now.
Yeah, he said he called Republicans cowards. And I kind of agree with that, because the Democrats, those are the people who stand up and scream about what they want, and that's why they get it most of the time. So,
and by the way, like, to be clear, we're talking about leadership inside the party. We're not talking about every single person who identifies as a Republican, like you and me. I'm a Republican. This is a political tool. This is not my ideological. My ideology and my convictions are what they are. The Republican Party is a political tool where I hope to implement those things into American public life, but I don't draw my ideology from the party. The party is a tool, and the people running that tool are idiots. Right now, they are cowards. And to Mike's point, like, that's what we're talking about. We're not just talking about you and me, Republicans. We're talking about the leadership of the political machine. The political party is helpless, useless.
Yeah, we need our elected leaders to do a better job in getting what we want done. And I don't think that the values of the party are the same as they were even 8 years ago. I think it's very much the party of the worker now, which it didn't used to be. And it's just like those shifts, like, we need to get things done. And by sitting back and saying nothing will get done. So,
yeah, there's a huge, and that was one of the very interesting things to us when Phyllis was very early into the Trump train in 2015, 2016. I know there were a lot of us who were kind of surprised by that, because many of us, especially the last 20-something years with the Bush era and everything else, we've had a lot of the pro-life, pro-family, the moral right and everything. But Phyllis was one of the ones who said, no, he is saying things that are incredibly important to us as pro-America, pro-Constitution, pro-life, pro-family, pro-marriage, you insert whatever it is, pro-national sovereignty. He's saying things that matter. And on immigration specifically, and on American manufacturing and industry, we haven't had a candidate talk like this in a long time. And it's because we've had free trade folks all throughout the party, which sounds great. Free trade is a good. Now, the problem with that is we're not just talking about freely trading with your neighbors and having imports and exports. Free trade is always almost a set of principles that is completely unfair for our nation, because we end up abiding by things fairly and we enter into agreements with people who don't. There is no free trade with China. China's going to rob us blind at every possible opportunity. So when you have folks who come, all it does is they're giving a disadvantage to our nation instead of making America stronger. So free trade has just so often been an excuse that, you have someone who comes along, like Donald Trump in 2016, oh, you're just an isolationist. You're protectionist. You just want to bring everything back here and not have friends and allies. And that was the moment for a lot of us to go, no, that's not what he's saying. And that's not what I believe either. I just believe that we can't do it to the point where we completely disadvantage ourselves. Fine. If there's a deal to be had with a manufacturing company over here in a different nation, cool. But when we get to the point where we don't even know how to manufacture things in America anymore, you are literally reliant upon everyone else. And that goes for energy. That goes for, you run down all of the economic lists. We can't leave ourselves completely hanging out to dry with nothing left. And that, for Trump to come along and say that, it was the first time really since Reagan that we had rumblings of that. And the working class in America, all the blue collar folks go, yes, that. And Democrats give those overtures, but they don't really care about manufacturing in America. They ship everything overseas just as badly as Republicans have. So for the first time, we got a conservative Republican who said those things. And Phyllis had been saying it for years, and it was a big deal when Trump came along and said it. So it's very interesting now to watch a lot more people come along and say it. And it's become a very popular wing of the party to talk about.
Well, one of the things is he says we're the party of common sense now. So that's that free or trade deals that don't hurt us is a common sense thing. And one thing Trump talks about is energy and how Biden got rid of his energy policy and now we're importing oil and energy from places like Venezuela. Like, why are we doing that? We're relying, what is powering our country, we're getting from a third world country. So it's just one of those things where you just don't want to see the United States ripped off with any country. I get it, you want it to be fair. It sounds good when you say it, but like Ryan, like you just said, it doesn't always end up that way. It's the things that come with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have and that's why I think stuff like Collegians is so incredibly important. And I mean, we just named off a few. Like some of my favorites, we heard from Will Scharf. He's one of the president's attorneys, one of President Trump's attorneys. He's running for attorney general here in Missouri. Will is sharp. He's on it. He knows exactly what's going on when it comes to the weaponized abuse of government against its own citizens. Powerful people like Donald Trump or lowly people like you and me who we don't have that kind of level of resources or influence, but they're coming after everyone nonetheless. Will gets it, and then he decides, hey, I'd like to go ahead and run for office and put myself in the spotlight to be able to stand up for citizens of Missouri. Cool. This gets me super excited because that's the kind of I need people who I know. You have stood next to one of the most unpopular men on the planet, simultaneously popular and unpopular, I should say. You stood next to one of the most controversial men on the planet in court, defending him against the lawfare. I know that you're probably going into office to do the right thing. My reservations are very low because you've already done the not easy road. And that's what you're always worried about. Are you going to actually go in and do the right thing when you get into office? Or are you just going to start to get along and go along with the flow and take advice from the lobbyists and money from the special interests and all the things, the compromises that end up happening? To see someone like that gets me excited. Carrie Gress, I thought, was great. She's an author, wrote the book The End of Woman that we talked about on this show last fall. I think we had a whole episode devoted to her book. Fantastic. And it's not just fight back against the feminists because this and this and this that they say are wrong. Yeah, fight back against it. It's wrong, but here's what we fight for. And then let's talk about the truth of femininity and womanhood in America and across the world. And we talked about Josh Hawley's book, the same thing. Yeah, here's what's happened to men. But unlike the Andrew Tates of the world who correctly diagnosed the problem, masculinity is being destroyed. And Carrie Gress, femininity is being destroyed. Carrie Gress, Josh Hawley, and others are saying, okay, but here's the real answer. And then there's the posers of the world like Andrew Tate who offer some alpha male nonsense that this isn't the answer. You got some fun quips online, but you're then offering something else that's terrible. It's just opposite of that, but it's not the right thing. So to have voices like hers and like others is really our whole lineup of people say, okay, but here's the truth. Now we go after that. I'm not just against these things the left is doing. Here's what I'm for. And I have to be rabidly for it and push that forward in a legislative agenda, political agenda, cultural agenda, get everyone on board with it. Speaking the truth that's where we're at now. Otherwise, we just put a political Band-Aid on it. We elect Donald Trump again, but if we don't keep changing people's minds and their votes later on, great. So we got 4 more years of Trump, but then what about that? What after that? We just do this all over again. We have to fight for another person, fight for another. We need to shift the nation back that direction so that people understand it and it becomes less of a fight every single year to try to make it work politically, because we need the culture to shift, not just politics. That's related to some interesting conversations that we've been having. Yeah. We talk about the real unauthorized caucuses. That's just behind the scenes. But Carrie Gress was great. I always love John Mills. John Mills knows so much. Colonel John Mills behind the scenes on stuff. Scott Walter from the Capitol Research Center. They are behind so much that we see from other organizations. Even Capitol Research Center was the forefront organization looking into that issue. They're awesome. He had a great one. So many people who are just, again, we're going after the truth. I'm done with all the rest of this nonsense. Let's just talk about the truth. It was great.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic program, front to back. But that's, Craig Shirley, Pete Sessions came in. We had a lot of members of Congress who couldn't end up coming. We had, I guess, votes that night that were just wild. So, Pete Sessions came down and talked about a little what's going on with us. But it was an incredibly important program, and I think that was great. And then, of course, you got to go to D.C. for the first time.
Yeah, it was really cool.
It was fun. Which I don't know if this is interesting for me though, because in my mind, I noticed this. You want to talk about how fast technology moves, how fast politics moves. I walk around the Capitol, which I've been doing for a long time now in different trips to DC, and I don't even think a single thing about January 6, 2021. Doesn't even enter my mind. It's almost like, oh yeah, that happened too. I forgot about that. And for you, I noticed you commented on that a couple of times, like, this is where that happened. Because you've been seeing footage of that. Like, it kind of is a blip on the radar for me, but it was like a part of the history of that building to you, because this is just, I had seen it so many times before January 6th, and I know about the narrative, and I'd kind of moved on, but I forget that, you've never been there. So this is part of the narrative built around the Capitol for you before you even got to see it in person. I don't know exactly what that means. That was just interesting to me. I noticed that, and I thought, oh yeah, I guess that happened on this side of the building. All these footage, these pieces of footage that we saw.
Yeah, it's one of those things I kind of like when I heard Ed talking about January 6th, and he's kind of talking about it like it's a thing of the past. Well, it is a thing of the past, but he was almost desensitized to it. Mm-hmm. So he was just like, yeah, January 6th, this happened down the street from where I am right now. Like that kind of like that, the location significance of it. I don't know. I guess I'd never been there before. It was the first time I've seen it. I don't really see many videos of the Capitol, and the only footage I really ever see is the January 6th footage.
That's interesting. It makes me think of it too. Like you say that. What was it? You said something to me this week about, and it kind of struck me as funny because again, we're not that far apart in age, but it really depends on what's happened in your lifetime. Because you said something to me, I think about, yeah, you remember 9/11 or something like that, like where you were, which you weren't born yet, which is wild because again, we're not that far off in age, but holy cow. But you said something about that and I was like, yeah, I remember, I know where I was, and this is old history to me because I've known about this, I've thought about this for a long time, but I realized it is kind of interesting because at a certain point, that was January 6th to me, in the sense that I had never been to New York. Everything I had ever seen and was ingrained in my young memory was footage from that day and from the rubble and from smoke and everything. So when I first got to see it, like 3 or 4 years after that in person, it was still a pile of rubble in the ground, like big, construction fences all around it. But it was like, I felt like that moment, kind of like with you, like, oh my gosh, this is where this happened, because that was my entire experience until that moment. Now I've been there, I've seen the memorials, I've gone around New York, World Trade Center 1, the big new tower. But I had that moment with New York City the first time I went there. It was kind of interesting to me. I thought about that after you said something to me, and I'm like, I had the same experience. It just depends. Was this part of your formative years, or were you too young to know about it, or were you an adult and you processed it differently rather than a young adult and you kind of moved your way through? It was very interesting. I thought about some of those things. And it reminded me, it's not just technology that moves fast, it really is culture that moves incredibly fast. So there's a couple things I thought about.
I never really thought of it like that.
It's interesting. And we're all colliding on this. Now, what do we do about our country and where are we? Like, we all have these different shared experiences. It's very, folks, we got a lot of work. And we got a lot of cool stuff to defend and a lot of cool things to do in America, but they're going to be really hard. And we have got to all be on the same page. We live in unprecedented times, and events like Collegians and podcasts like this are needed because we all need to be thinking about and self-educating and looking at all of these issues across the board, putting them together in the pieces that we need to understand the truth of each situation and then what to do about it and how to go forward. I can't even stress that enough. This kind of stuff is so important because you consider new things. So Closing thoughts, Collegians. What else? Anything else stick out to you that was particularly fun? It could be, we've gone around everything: speaker, a trip, a Rumble mini fridge item. I don't know. You guys were cranking energy drinks out of there, so.
Yeah, I usually don't drink energy drinks. I was shaking a little bit.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, what, the bus on the way there? Bus caught on fire?
Yeah, our airport tram did catch on fire on the way to the terminal here in St. Louis. At one point it started smoking, and that was great. Props to our driver, who is just like, I've driven broken down buses before. You just can't let it stop. Flips it into neutral, keeps revving it, honking at everyone to get out of the way. I'm like, you have done this before, sir. And fantastic for you. So we made it. We made it to the terminal. He's like, we ain't going to stop here. We're getting to the terminal. And we got to the terminal. Oh, boy. Good stuff. What happens on the trips? This is what you just need to go places. Go places and experience these things. Let's see. Next week, I'll go ahead and close it out with some housekeeping. Next week is, in fact, Independence Day on Thursday. We will not be here. We will not be broadcasting. And I hope that you're not watching us live at noon. Go and barbecue and celebrate freedom with your family and read the Declaration of Independence. However, we will, in fact, do something next week, I think probably on Wednesday. Get on the email list at unauthorizedcaucus.com, and we will let you know what exactly is going to happen for our alternate schedule next week. We'll do something. While you're there, like, share, and subscribe across the board to all of the socials. Make sure that you are subscribed to us on Rumble in particular, because more things are going to be happening on Rumble, and you want to be over there as a part of that. And then, of course, as always, make sure that you send this link to a friend and make sure that you start a conversation with them. Go and check out the big video. Again, there's a huge, almost 5-hour video over on Rumble right now and that, by the way, Collegians was broadcast exclusively on Rumble. So the clips from it will definitely hit YouTube and other places, but it is all right there if you want it, and we'll be dividing it down into the different speakers as we're able to as we move forward in the coming days. So go and look at it and share that with a friend as well, because there's some very worthwhile content to look at, to talk about, and stuff that's very important for us as a nation moving forward. A lot of topics people don't know. So that's it. Anything else for the good of the order?
Debate day.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's debate day. As you may have noticed, this is my original 2016 shirt. I didn't give the memo, so we didn't have debate stuff across. But I've got my original 2016 shirt. I have, of course, my favorite one of my favorite lapel pins, an Appeal to Heaven, which used to call the George Washington flag. We're going to call it the Sam Alito flag now. You know, with all the Alito with the stuff. And then, of course, I got red, white, and blue socks on, and even shoes and Trump socks. You got to go full, because let's be real. This isn't a debate tonight. This is a dog and pony show. First of all, we haven't really had probably authentic political debates in America for a number of decades. They've been a little bit more showmanship up on stage, standing behind a podium, instead of the old days where we all sat down and had this talk show style conversation about it. I'm thinking about Nixon and Kennedy. We just talked about that with Gwen this morning. Those were the days, man. That was like debate. But we've moved into this new era of it. But tonight, none of that. There's no audience. They're going to cut mics. They're going to CNN. It's just going to be terrible. It's a dog and pony show. So you know what? You root for your guy, which my guy is the only one who's actually going to give me more freedom in this case. And then we move forward and go from there. So I'm decked out. We're ready to go for debate night. It'll be, for a political junkie, it'll be interesting. For everyone else, I hope that it'll be revealing, though, because Joe Biden now, I mean, I don't really think that anyone needs a debate or any set of debates, because we have 4 years of each man in office by which to judge which direction we want to go this year. And I think so many people will vote based on that. The debate's not going to sway anything. A real debate, a dog and pony show, doesn't matter. People aren't, I don't think, going to move there, because we have the proof in the pudding of, I know what Trump did for 4 years, and I've watched and experienced what Biden did for 4 years. I know what I want to pick. I don't feel like anyone's going to be moved by this stuff. Would you tend to agree with that, or do you think there's actually people looking for more?
I think there's people looking for more, because Trump, no media shows Trump in full form. Like, that's live TV. You'll get to see what he actually thinks, like what he actually says, because CNN, all these,
that's true.
They cut it up into 10-second clips on an hour-long speech.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
see, that's interesting, though. But I mean, the regular CNN watcher, do you think they have any interest in hearing Trump long form, or do they already just think he's the devil and they've moved on?
Well, I think they're going to expose themselves when they shut off his mic, and everyone sees that.
And see, and someone talked about, like I saw, they were sending around yesterday, the CNN did a little segment. Here's what it's going to look like. And they have the split screen with the two guys. When one person is talking and the other one tries to talk, but their mic is off, you see that we can't hear them, and you can only hear me. And I'm like, that is so disingenuous, because that's not what CNN's going to do. When his mic is cut, they're not even going to have him on the screen. You can't see him. You're not going to be able to read his lips. You're not going to be able to see his hands, his gestures, his face, nothing. I bet you money that every time his mic is cut off, they won't even have him on the screen. You can't get anything from the context of what he looks like he's trying to say.
I didn't think of that.
It is. I am so certain that they will be as disingenuous as possible. So I look at that and I say, if everyone could see, even if they cut the mics off, that would be interesting. But I don't even think CNN's going to let people see him.
Yeah, they definitely won't. Now that I'm thinking about it,
I can't imagine. I might be wrong. I am very happy to be wrong, but I don't think that's the case. They're going to twist and turn this every which way. There's no audience, which is fantastically bad for Trump because an audience is just the thing that lights him up.
Yeah, it fuels him.
And he fuels, man, that man knows how to work an audience. He really is a master of media and stuff like that. It's fantastic. So I don't know. Tonight's debate is just going to be, it's going to be interesting, but it's not going to be productive, I don't believe. I am very happy to be wrong on that, though. I hope that I am, because I just see it as being, like I said, a dog and pony show that CNN's going to run. But I know why he's going to say yes. I mean, you take every opportunity at that level. You got to do it. But we'll see. It's going to be an interesting one. That's happening tonight from the Atlanta studios of CNN. It's at 8 o'clock Central Time for about 90 minutes. So you do the math on your time zone from there. But tune in and watch and see, because I think it's definitely interesting. I am convinced that if not tonight or this week, if they don't make some sort of announcement that Joe Biden is stepping down or has an illness or he's not going to be able to manage it anymore, giving them time to swap him out for a different candidate by the convention in August, the Democrat convention in August, if that doesn't happen this week, this night for the debate, I think he's their man running through November, which is really interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the politics of the whole thing, it's very exciting to see what's going to happen. I still maintain I think Trump wins in a landslide, but I don't know if I don't think they seat him in January. That's what I have no idea about.
Yeah.
But I think he wins. Despite all the cheating, I think he wins. We'll see. It's going to be really interesting.
Should be.
Okay, cool. That's it. It should be, in the immortal words of David Gordon, it should be.
Probably will be.
Probably will be. Now he's changing. Oh my gosh. Yeah, but that's it. Thank you for being here. It's a wonderful Thursday. We've gone on long enough. We'll let you all get back to what you are doing, and make sure and like, share, and subscribe. Go and sign up for the emails, and we'll see you next Thursday. It'll be Thursday. Oh, wait, no, we won't. It'll be Independence Day.
Wednesday.
We'll probably talk to you on Wednesday. We'll let you know. Go sign up for the email list so you don't miss out, people. That's all.